so it's nothing to worry about.
Well,
It still gets cold.
yeah,
Yeah,
if it was that simple.
it's a difference between weather and climate.
Oh, look at that! Now Bengt is moved.
Yeah.
Is that from your cabin, you could say, or house?
It's it's second home.
Mhm. Are you there now?
No, I'm in the city, in Stockholm. This was from not last weekend, but the weekend before. But it looked like this. There's a lot of snow.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's you see the little house with the green door is a sauna.
But there's no ice on the water, right? Or is it?
No, it's a quite big open water here, so no ice yet. It's
Yet.
really iced on that part of the archipelago.
All right, should we get going?
Yeah.
So catch up from last time. Let's see where I had that at so we went through a lot of the features in the View Model Editor, but time ran out, so there's still some to go to that we could mention and talk about. And of course the one thing is the actions. Just to not complicate things, we can use the standard model. And actions, one thing that might be confusing is that we sort of call two things actions. Buttons that you place on the screen like this, or by adding an action column. And Emily, as you see, we added the shortcut key that you requested to get the generic columns and action columns.
Nice.
So this way you can get actions, and in the actions the expressions switch to action editor instead of expression. So this can have side effects. And what do we mean with side effects? Well, it can change data. So if we go like self some string, we can use the assignment operator, and let's say that we add a letter to that string upon that action, and so that was that one, and we take adding B on that one, and let's start these things up with I'm gonna create one of these and view it, and if I press that one there, we'll add a B and an A. But that's not the only thing that we call action. We also call these things actions. So these are usually referred to as left side actions, and these are button actions. So what's the difference and how do they relate? Left side actions can do actually a few things that button actions couldn't do initially. We're going to look into that the difference has it's getting smaller, but the placed actions like this, the buttons, have had a hard time to actually navigate to take you to another view, because these are part of this view model and doesn't really know much about the rest of the application and shouldn't need to. But the left side actions comes in two flavors. Class action, associating the action to the current context class thing in this case, or view model action, something that's available on some of the levels in this view model. So if I press the view model action, I get a new view model action that I can manage in a new window like this. And this one is test 1. And this has a lot of... Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I would assume this is primarily just for wiring into your classes. You wouldn't put any real business logic here, right? Your business logic would be in your class functions, right?
Yes, so that's the recommended strategy, just like in any development tool. You would try to keep the heavy logic out of the UI and the wiring, because if it's heavy logic, you will sooner or later want to reuse it or have it have access to it in other places, and it's a good practice to always push heavy logic into classes and methods or derived attributes, derived links and things like that, instead of having complex stuff in the UI. Having said that, developers, myself not excluded, always think that stuff will be really, really small, so they start in the UI and then it grows, and before you know it, you actually have quite a lot of things in the UI. So that's one of those never-ending battles in keeping your UI lean and clean.
And the temptation would probably be worse with a view model, right? Because I assume you can present the same view model in various contexts in your UI. And so if you had something that, like, I don't know, paints the screen a different color based on the data, is that business logic or is that UI logic? It's probably gray.
Yeah, it's a gray area, and especially when it comes to styling and things like that. But it sort of helps to separate how you look at styling if it's information conveying style. So there is something that's communicated by changing the color. Well, then it's sort of tied to business logic. But if it's only because it looks good with this brownish color, then it's not business logic. Then it's fashion, I guess. So that's always something to keep in mind.
Are there much of performance considerations? If, let's say, you're doing a color change, is it more expensive to do that at the class level versus the view model?
I would say no. It's really no difference when it comes to execution. If you think of a UI in a view model, it's sort of working like derived attributes already. So and they are evaluated once, and if they change, they are re-evaluated. But if they don't change, they just sit there. So there's really no difference. And when executing action languages and things like that, it's the same motor behind it. So it's pretty much the same. It's more for keeping track of stuff and keeping the UI lean and not discovering too late that you need to move stuff. So it's good practice, but it doesn't really have any big penalties. Especially with MDriven, where you have full trackability of things, so you can always go to used by and see that this is used in all of these artifacts.
Cool. Very cool.
So whatever you do, you will always find where it's used.
So something like, say, what I call a finite state machine, where your UI might change, enabling a button, say a save button when the data is dirty, or a cancel button when the data is dirty, or a delete button or something. I would think that then becomes more view model driven than the base class.
So it's some things, and we will see, as in the view model, you have the variables that we talked about briefly last time, and the view model automatic variables starting with vCurrent and vSelected keeps track on what the user has selected for any given moment. So if we are in this...
So you would say that's the finite state machine of the actual UI is in those variables as opposed to in the class?
Yes. So stuff that goes in the UI, because you could bring up potentially 5 views into on the same object, having the same definition, and you might want to select different things in all 5, and that should be okay.
Yeah. I picked the wrong week to miss last week from the sounds of it.
There's the video, so you can just catch up.
I will.
When you feel ready. So
I have maybe a detailed question.
Yeah.
If you don't want to have the sidebar, but you will have some view model actions that you triggered with the self VM dot action.
So there is a couple of ways.
Yeah, but not finished it. And you have a table that you only want default action for, not get the pop-up menu. And one way to do that is to opt out view model actions or class actions. But then they are invisible for the self VM dot action.
Okay. There might be an issue. Let's take that later. Let's see if we come to it naturally when we talk about this. So what we can do with the view model action in this case, and very similar to the class action based on a specific object, then, is to give it an enable expression and an execute expression. And the execute expression can be just like the other expression that we had on the placed button, with we setting an EAL expression. But what you also can do is to bring up other views. So you can jump to stuff and navigate, have the user to navigate from here. So now we only have a few things to choose from, but let's say that we create a new UI that's rooted in the thing as well, and it's rooted, and we add just a button here, or a thing there called, and we're gonna use that attribute, use that one, and use the suggested name. So we're done, and that was called view model 1, and we should bring that one up. And then there pops up some actions, how do you want to bring it up? There's a possibility to save before navigate. And also the root object. You must, since this was a rooted view model, you must tell what it should show. And since this being a view model action, and this is something that's changed very recently, that you could say self here before, but that's actually wrong because self isn't defined for the view model action. So we changed that, so you must use the variables to get to the thing that you want to show. And the root is named vcurrent underscore and the same thing as the view model. So that's the one that I'm after in this case. So now the root on the view brought up will be thing. Yeah, and the required return type is thing, so everything is okay. And there's also a possibility to execute some EAL on the view that we brought up. So sometimes you want to hand it an object and do something in the target view. And you also have the option to set it if it's going to be a modal view, not being a total switch of view, just something that pops up like a dialog above everything else. And this one is fairly new if it's a pop-up. So we can check this out, what happens if we save this and head over here and model refresh. So I sort of gave it conflicting answers there. I didn't save. I'm gonna save that one. I'm gonna view that one, and these work like this. And what happens when I press this one is that I move to that other view model. Fine, and that was what I expected. But if I say is modal, then there's yet more options that I should fill, because if something is modal, there will be an OK cancel. So when should the modal OK be enabled? Well, we can have all kinds of criteria here, but we could say that the sum string sum string is it equal to not sure what. Enable expression for model, okay. Vcurrent view model 1. That's a thing. Some, oh, okay, it was only some. Some string, is that equal to now? Then it should be okay to press the OK button. And then what we might want to do is, when someone press the OK button, because a really common usage of this is that you bring something up and the user picks something, and then when the user presses OK, then you want to know and act on what the user did. So, and that's also part of the modal action pattern. So the expression after modal OK, when the user has pressed OK, is an action. And what we can do then is to have the now we're back in our original view that brought this up, so it's the current view 1 thing, and the sum string, we could like add something here. I know. So let's see what happens if we refresh that and press this one is test. We get a new view model. Oh, this is something wrong with the styling in the VPF prototyper. I'm not sure why that is. I'm gonna fix that another day. So now the OK button that is rendered like this in the VPF prototyper isn't okay with this, because it's only okay if this is equal to now, and now it's okay, and then I can OK and close the window. Of course, I could always revert all changes and go back and discard changes, yes, and then I'm back. But the idea here is that I would right now be able to have it to OK it, and when I OK it, the modal action after OK will execute and do something with the choice that I've made. So that's how the modality work, and it wasn't as good looking in the VPF prototyper. So let's see what happens if we were to run this in the local turnkey prototyper. Okay, I haven't got any. All right, I might have been in the wrong catalog. So, and voila, start the prototyper. And if I have the view, I can view one thing, and if I click that one, it brings up the modal, and the OK is not pressable until now, and then I press OK and I get the update. Right, so that was the is modal. Let's check out the is pop-up. That's different. I need to close this one. So I'm going to say it's a pop-up instead. And what's a pop-up? Well, pop-up is if I click this, it just brings up a view on top of here, but if I click on any side, it will just close it. So this is good for bringing up more information in the UI quickly without things that probably wouldn't fit in the normal UI, but the user might need some more information. And let's see how that would work in here. Sort of works like that. Okay, that one became... So I haven't tried that one as a left side action, but we're gonna head over here and so this is the left side action, and I said it was completely different from the placed actions. But what we can do is have a placed action to call a left side action. And how would we do that? Well, if we click this one, we can pick the left side actions in this list. So what do you call it? This one is test 1. So now this button will sort of ignore this expression and only use this button to actually press this one. And then that makes more sense in having it as a pop-up. Model refresh. So now the pop-up comes up just where I pressed it. And so now it sort of pops up sort of out of screen, but then I can dismiss it just by clicking on the side. And now I said it should append I know once we dismiss it, but that would probably not be the case for a pop-up. So the left side actions can navigate, they can do the modal thing, they can do the pop-up thing, they can do some framework actions, which is calling save or refresh undo, and they can also do the modal OK if we're in a modal dialog, so to let you execute
Is the framework action just for this instance of this object, or
yeah,
would your save be for your entire space?
no, that's just defined for this action. So it's either one of these. Either you execute some EIL, or you do the view model bringing up, or you do the framework action, sort of.
Yeah, but the framework action for a save, let's say, is that going to update your entire eco space?
Good question. I think it will. So what we have done is on actions like this, or view model actions like the one I show, there is a new variable called self VM. And this has some functionality that is directed to the view model alone, like save. So this will only save the view model you're in, the context you're in. So that enables you to put a button on the screen that does the saving, or a left side action that does the saving. And there's more things in here. Maybe it's better to find them in the wiki, but the more prominent and often used are the REST APIs to access other services, external services, to get data from there. They're really practical and handy and well used, working very well. There's a refresh to call the sync server to pull any refresh data, and of course that's a bit of replaced by the signal R things and real-time things that pushes data automatically if you use the MDriven server as your persistence map. And while we're here, it might be good to know that actions like this can be rendered by something else. So if I were to put, let's say that this was just a static text that's over here, and I want this button that brings up the pop-up to be rendered by this one, it changes style a bit. It becomes like a hyperlink to show that it's pressable, and the button disappears because now it has no visible representation. It's sort of engulfed by this one, and that would bring us to something like this. Okay, now it's rendered outside of the screen. So if I press this one, the pop-up shows when pressing the text. And you can use that for different things, like if we had an attribute one that's a image, and that's one of the blob types, and let's see. I'm looking for the blob type. Maybe. Let's see. If I add this one, attribute one, and there's an image there, and I were to refresh, I have an image with an upload button, and I can take something like a small image there, and if I take the image and say that it's read only, because I don't want the upload button, so read only true, and need to say refresh. Now the upload button is gone, and what if I say that the action that was here is rendered by the attribute one instead. So it's rendered by this one. Can I have both? Oh, maybe. No. New button, rendered by attribute one. Let's see. Save and refresh, and now when I click the image I get the pop-up. So that way you can, without too much work, put clickability or actions on other stuff in the UI. That's not that's just a way to just add a button or an action and say that it's rendered by something else. Oh no, let's see. I don't know where that went. Okay, never mind. Should be possible to, if we have an image here, let's see, if I remove read only. Oh. Yeah, that was the one. And now I don't want it, now I want it read only, because otherwise the click will be change image, I guess. View one thing. So that might be something that we have missed in, we have done a lot of changes to the, do we have Dennis on the line? I'm not sure. Maybe make a
No,
note of that.
They had another engagement
Yeah.
today.
So we make a note of that to check that out. But it should be that clicking this image should trigger the action. Yeah. So periodic actions. That's actually one of the things that you, Derek, asked me last time when if variables could be made to be like derivable things. And I said, well, no, they can't. Variables are only updated on certain actions. But then, just after we had talked, it dawned on me that that is exactly what you can do with a periodic action, is to have it automatically react to something. So if we were to do this action as a periodic action, and we do that just by setting the interval to something, and this is in milliseconds, so I'm gonna set it to like 100. It's not really important because we don't want to run it without any checks anyway, and we're going to disable the action when, yeah, let's say some string, and that's a string, so that has size, right? If it's bigger than 5. So if the string is bigger than 5, then it will be disabled. And this checkbox will just make sure that this expression is negated and used on the visible expression, so the action isn't showing when it isn't running. So the visible expression will follow the enable expression, but this is a disable expression, so it's negated. One of those things. So this action should run every 100 milliseconds, adding a until it's size 5, then it will stop, hopefully. So it doesn't stop. I wonder why. So the disable size is not the operator, it's length for strings.
And I think you should use a dot there, actually.
Yeah, let's see, I'm gonna make this non-static so that it can be changed. And if there's just a 1, it immediately added 5 A's to it, and then it sort of reached its disable expression, and then it became disabled. So this is actually one good way to have variables that are updated depending on something that changes. Let me show. I'm going to add a variable called, let's call it new variable, and I'm going to show it on screen. So adding a new generic column. I'm going to call it the same. Put it over here, and now it became an action because I pressed the wrong thing. So now it's here. So that's a variable, And let's say that this action also, let's see, what should it do? The new variable should take on the value of the some string size, and that's a string, so it should do it as string in the end to make it good. And so now the action hasn't run because this is already more than 5 signs. So if I change it, okay.
Again, you use size instead of length.
Yeah, okay, good. That's one of my more common mistakes. So this way you can simulate or have the effect of variables automatically getting a value depending on when something else change. This might not be the perfect example, but I can't come up with any better. I think you get the idea. Whenever something changes, the action will trigger, and if you then update the variable to what you want it to be and make sure that the action stops because now it's equal to the thing that it should try to mimic, then you have all the makings of a derived attribute, but it's driven by this timer that has this stop condition on it.
I use something very similar for vehicle VIN decoding. When a user enters a VIN number, it has to be 17 digits. If it's less than 17, it shows on a label that it's less than 17,
Yeah.
and it shows it in red. And when it's correct, it goes to black and says it's correct. If it's too long, it then goes to red again and says it's too long. But it has to be updating the UI instantly because it's as the user's typing.
Yeah. Good. So that leads me into a thing that we didn't have on the list, but if we take, if we have just that use case, we have on the whole view model validation rules, and there you can put a rule that, let's say, I'm going to copy this one. So the validation rule 1 should be that some string length should be equal to 5. That will never work. We say, let's say bigger than 5. So if it's bigger than 5, it's okay. And this must be at least 5. And that was the wrong place. So rule 1 is this, but rule 1 isn't where should it show. I wanted to show it on this one, and then I will go to that column and right click and validation rules, rule 1. Rule 1 should be picked on that one. Next time I look on validation rules, I see there's a check mark on that one. So if I have many rules, I can spread them out over my view model columns. And the model refresh here. And if I, yeah, okay. let's turn that off. The action column, turning it off from being a periodic action by removing its timer value. So then it renders with the, depending on the styling scheme you have, it renders the value here. But as I noticed, as you said, you wanted it to switch immediately on user typing, and this VPF UI currently only applies when leaving the cell, so it really doesn't work the way you wanted it to in VPF. But I think on the here it works more like what you need, because if I put more letters in, it detects the change and will add the warning message. And also this is style dependent, so that you can control how to render this. So this is one way to get notes to the user about stuff that's wrong. And another way to get that kind of notes back to the user is, of course, the constraints on classes. So if this was a constraint on thing, let's see. So going to the constraint collection and adding a new constraint, calling it something, and the body should be, let's say, something different. It should be bigger than 6, and must be 6. And the constraints are rendered down here and will disappear once they are fulfilled. And of course, as you put those on class level, you might not want this particular constraint to show in this particular UI. At least we have noticed that sometimes is the case. So what you can do is to opt out constraints that are discovered on the classes within here. So I'm gonna opt that out, and then you can opt it in later if it's something you want to show. And also the constraint has different levels and that's rendered as different colors on the warning. So this was let's see, this was error if I set it as a warning only, and refresh this, it's yellow and the information is white, and so you can get it going like that. And
a question related to this. If I put a constraint target attribute, I expected it to show up like what's that called? Like like in red here, you know, around attribute, but it didn't. So I'm thinking, is that something that we're missing in the rendering?
So there's I think the constraint target was added as an information within the MDriven framework, so that you would know, have a short information about what you as the constraint designer thought was wrong, because the constraint isn't limited to a specific attribute, it's something on the class. So but I don't think we
point that out. I know it's a little bit too far away from the user interface.
yes, so we don't know exactly, can't do an exact match, except if the names were to match, or the expression were to be exact the attribute. But that's so I think we didn't move that forward into the UI, depending on that reason.
Because the next thing I tried in that sense was it's like, yeah, but I would like to add it on the view model and then choose one of my constraints as the expression to show, to highlight the attribute. But,
So that would be fair, and I think that would be a good thing to. So what if I read you correctly?
A validation rule that reference the constraint
Exactly.
would be really nice.
Yes.
But we have added so many features over the years that maybe others wonder why Lars asked this, but it's been many years with many features. So.
Yeah. So and at some point we need to consolidate and choose what to push forward and what to leave behind, and so that's always an issue with the long-lived systems, that certain things will eventually die because they are replaced by other stuff. And
just a short question about the rules or the constraints. Constraints, you can set the level if it's error or warning or success. The rules you can't set.
No,
level.
we don't have that feature on the rule. They are all treated the same as broken.
Okay, so you can't define a successful rule that it went green when you fulfill the right condition.
Nope.
No.
But you can do things like you can use OCL to filter and do things with your constraints. So you can actually make an OCL that takes all the valid constraints and shows them the way you want. So you can filter, sort, and do things with the constraints.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Self.constraints, maybe?
Broken constraints or constraints.
Broken constraints is just broken, simple as strings. But constraints, you can actually then write expressions about. You see there you have broken, description, error level, and so on and so forth. So you can use all these features to sort, filter, and do things with your constraints.
So we can reject all the
special ones,
broken.
like error, and show them in other places in the user interface.
Reject all the broken and present their name as a comma list.
And these are subscribed, so as everything else, it just updates automatically.
So that one ended up over here. So this these are okay, and so this must be at least 6. Okay, these are okay. Self-constraints, reject, broken, name. I think they should be okay. Let's try it in the debugger. Whenever you get tripped, start the debugger, and Also, Emily, did you see when I started it on an empty model, the first expression was added?
Also great.
And let's see. So
Thanks, Emily.
what we can do here is one thing to find the data is to use these secret forms. Search, and I'm gonna grab that one and pull it to the to this expression, and then this expression is rooted in self. So then I can do the self constraints. Let's try that first. So there's something and it's not broken. So I still see it, and I then take the name and so that should work. Let's see why it didn't. These are okay. Okay, now it's blocked by this one. Okay, now it's working.
Maybe you were so fast, Hans, that you didn't actually save, change the model before you switched.
Or maybe this React thing isn't subscribing correctly.
It usually has its work for me.
Yeah.
But maybe I haven't thought about having it on. Yeah, well, I think I have, but maybe not then. I've never even seen that it shows incorrect information.
No, let's make a note of that and check that one, because it should be fine to do it like this. And actually we should be able to repeat it in the debugger, and if we have the same self, dragging this green dot to that green dot, having the same self in these two, and if I then set self dot some string assigned something really long, and something really short, it's not broken. Execute, it's not broken. Now it's, oh, but it should be broken, right? Because it was longer than 6. Must be 6. So there's some, yeah, that's a new thing. That should be definitely be possible. So let's check that out. Make a note of that one.
I understand the concept.
Yeah. All right. Auto-form templates. So as you do view models, we talked about these options here, and actually this one is new. So, but we talked about these last time, but we didn't talk about the auto-form strategy on the whole view model, because you can of course go to the model and do auto-forms for everything, but that might be too much. certain points. You might just want to have the auto form for this particular one based on my class thing. And going on UI first, it says should it be called view model 2 and the class thing, and should it follow the template of a document auto form, and then it requires a root, and it put all the attributes in here for me. Or should it be like a seeker form? Then it turns into a seeker for this class, and I see here the requires root was not unchecked because it doesn't need to be unchecked just because it's a seeker, but usually the seeker doesn't need to be rooted because you don't want to be forced to have something to get something. And the third one was the value store pattern that's implemented like that, a list of all and the attributes at the side. So that's a really quick way to get things going. And you can actually sort of do your whole modeling this roundabout way by saying, oh, I don't have any class that I want, or I know a class that I don't have in my model yet. So create a new one. Yeah, let's see. Wow, this hasn't been tested. The idea is that you are able to type into this box, but currently you can't. Too bad. Maybe there was a class created for me anyway. I need to check if... No. Okay. So, apart from that then. So let's do one for this. Yeah, so if we do view models like that, it also add an action leading here. And that's global actions for the ones that doesn't require a root. So if having done this and I'm just refreshing this, I see that the global actions created for me are popping up here. So this is the view model 2, which was a value store pattern for thing, and this makes it possible for me to add new things and set all the values on these things. Of course, this thing should probably have the default string representation set so that it shows maybe this value instead of its type. And this one, same thing, but for another type of class, the detail class. So this is very handy to get things going really quick, and then they are your own and not considered as auto forms, so they won't disappear or be updated automatically. You can do whatever you want with these and remove the things that you don't want, and they will be just as if you have done it manually doing the tools.
Hans, if it's supposed to end at 8, you're 10 minutes.
Oops. Yeah.
Yeah. But we can really say, I can see why this can, there's so many features to show, and I guess it serves a great purpose also because it basically tells you how to develop.
Yeah. So it's central to all the things that we talk about. So I think it's really good that we get the chance to just walk things through and point things out and discover issues as well. Then. Good. Thanks for listening tonight, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Hans? Ja, jag ska ge mig av och hämta Ellen också, så hon ringde nämligen mitt i alltihopa. Så att...
Yes.
Men det